Welcome to my second video on the new science of physical geometry. Let me say before we go too much further that I don't object to large observatories and experiments in big science. But this is not the beginning of the human study of space and of the universe and of human connections to it and of the nature of things. And as a humanist and a traveler and a missionary and an Acadian, I have benefited from studying the past as well. A bit about physical geometry in terms of some of the general principles. The principles and cognitive composition of physical geometry are such as to defy many of the most basic intellectual commitments of modern mathematics and sciences, while affirming other equally foundational components of all mathematics and sciences. Let us make no mistake that physical geometry challenges the scientific status quo in a great number of ways. Honesty will compel us to say that modern cosmology and Darwinist biology are intrinsically and fully atheistic in their entire approach. And this is not. This is coming from a place of someone who deeply celebrates spirituality, religion, faith, and the consecration of time and human experience. The human life cycle and the human time cycle are seen as they often are tied to the way the earth and the sun interact, and so you have years and days and holy days that fall on them and celebrate them. But there are also other connections, spherical connections in the human experience. The cycle of appearance, iteration, creation and diminution of things. And those go with a celebration of the very essence of space-time, which is both physical and spiritual. Therefore, it is imposed as a burden on the one proposing a revolution or seeking to storm a citadel to carry the weight, and that's a substantial and somewhat terrifying burden. The current mathematical scientific community regard nothing as the default state to which something is added. In other words, the thing with which you begin to evaluate space is as nothing, that it is empty space. This is true in practice regardless of cosmological differences among scientists and cosmologists. However, in this discipline, space-time is seen as a rich and lawful realm of great intrinsic responsiveness and integrity, which tends to be pregnant with matter and energy. To assume nothing as the basic default position is, in the view of physical geometry, deeply erroneous. First, the discipline claims to bring together effectively philosophy, physics, and mathematics in an embryonic form which as it matures fully, can embrace all three disciplines, those disciplines being philosophy, physics, and mathematics. In fact, being a master discipline for all three. Working from the general construct of physical geometry to a specific answer may require the use of other subordinate disciplines perpetually, even when this discipline is perfected. By the very nature of its intrinsic structure, it is less binary and less linear. Straight lines are so rare in this discipline as to be almost exclusively theoretical. Straight line segments and rays, however, which some common lay people would call lines, are not rare. It is a discipline made up of rays, line segments, circles, and real lines. Real lines are chiefly variations of segments of spirals and are classified as real lines because they have dimensions in the physical realm, multiple dimensions, which are measurable. We add a few terms in our first video related to physical geometry, and now we have some other terms that are more or less about relations and operations, but they're just a continuing of the glossary. Socrates, many centuries ago, felt that defining terms was the beginning of intellectual endeavor, and that's often the case. First term we want to talk about is dimensionality. I want to define that as the quality of empirical reality and truth, the demonstrable persistence, integrity, and interactivity of the physical geometry dimensions, which are magnitude, moment, latitude, and longitude, which are abundantly present in these dimensions of physical geometry and are entirely absent in the x, y, z dimensions of current mathematics and science. In other words, take the x, y, z chart on any problem that you've ever seen or worked or heard of, and you can change x, y, and z. They're a declaration that you know nothing about space you're talking about. Magnitude, moment, longitude, and latitude are intrinsically different, intrinsically dependent on one another, and intrinsically definable. I want to also use the term fluxon. That is the difference in magnitude between the lowest and highest values of magnitude in a natural union. That's the fluctuation in the surface of a sphere, would be a more general and therefore less precise for us way of saying it. A flux are those differences in magnitude and union, those differences in magnitude marked by unions. Longitudinalization is the relative or complete resolution of the longitudes of a spherical system into their own system and their tendency to become pure, positive, or negative energy. Latitudinalization is the relative or complete resolution of the latitudes of a spherical system into their own system and their tendency to become pure matter. It'll take quite a few of these videos to do anything of substance. This one is shorter than the last, but I believe it covers enough ground for today. And I hope to do some other videos for family and friends, because my spherical philosophy reminds me that just focusing on this is not a complete life for me. And I want to say that I hope you are beginning to understand the fundamental difference in this approach. We'll have to return to discuss why classical measures and standard scientific practices can still continue to play an important role, despite the fact that they are challenged in many ways at the very roots by this discipline. And of course, I'm sure a good number of you think this is entirely ridiculous.